folks, this is another $100 guitar special. I may have done a video about this. I can't remember. It is a JB player guitar, or JBP they go by these days. And it is a spruce top guitar. And the reason why I make that distinction is because this is a $100 guitar, and these days a $100 guitar, particularly on Amazon and other vendors, doesn't mean spruce top. It means basswood. So what I'm seeing from my vantage point is at this price level, there's lots and lots and lots of options. However, there are fewer spruce top, cedar top options anywhere close. Cedar's right out. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a nice cedar top guitar for $150, $200. But even spruce top, spruce ply top, is getting more and more rare. You're looking more like 140, 160, 180 for beginner spruce guitars. And solid spruce is getting towards and exceeds 200. Now, a year ago, I lived in another town about 20 miles south of here, closer to a larger city. And I always kept $100 guitars on my stand because people wanted them all the time. I got guitars I could sell with a gig bag for $100, a C note, out the door, guaranteed. In fact, they didn't hang around. You saw them on a video, and by the time I put the video on YouTube, they were gone. And there's been probably by now a couple of hundred of those over the last 3 or 4 years since I started this channel. I have since moved to a town a little bit further away, although it's still in a metropolitan area. It's slightly less crowd. Well, it is getting very crowded. This whole state is going nuts. It's insane what's happening in Colorado, but it is probably not quite as busy in terms of a metropolitan area. It's not as close to Denver as I was. So what I'm seeing now is when I get these $100 guitars, they sit a little bit more. I've had this one listed now for 3 or 4 days, and no one's picked it up, which is kind of surprising because you just can't get this stuff on the market anymore. For this price, in this condition, I should add. Now, there are guitars on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for $50, $60, $70, $80 that people are selling, but they are not luthiers. They do not set them up before you buy them like I do. They do not provide a gig bag if there isn't one with the guitar. They do not put fresh strings on them. So these guitars are in much worse shape, and in a lot of times, and I bought my fair share of Craigslist guitars from other people locally, a lot of times they don't play. They need work to get them to play. I'm talking about a guitar in like new playing condition with a really good setup, with a spruce ply top, mahogany back and sides, with a gig bag, for $100. And if this were at the other place I lived at, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, this would be gone. It would be out the door. Somebody would have called me within hours of me listing it, if not minutes, and grabbed this. So I suspect that these are sitting around a little bit more because of the area difference I'm in. However, I'm also wondering if it is a indication of a general downturn in economics or business. A lot of the market experts around the world tell us we're heading for recession. And as I've been selling a lot of things lately and trying to thin down my stuff, not just music but other stuff as well, I've noticed a general sluggishness, things that should have taken a little bit longer to sell or should have sold for a little bit more than they did. So I'm seeing in my own practices a slight indication of the beginnings of a recession. However, there are a lot of wealthy people around where I live, and everywhere you go, there's development, new subdivisions going in, new houses built, massive houses built. So there is plenty of money in the area. However, that money probably doesn't make it to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. So there's a slight downturn. There's the division of wealth is probably the issue. Is that poor people are getting poorer and wealthy people are getting more wealthy. But I won't get into class marketing here. It's not the place for it. However, I have noticed a downturn and a sluggishness in stuff that used to sell really, really fast. And of course, my area change only affects local sales. A lot of these guitars used to sell on Craigslist and Reverb as well, and it's just taking longer for that to happen. So I do think that there is a little bit of reluctance and or fear, caution maybe, around spending at the moment, as there are a lot of unresolved issues swirling around. And of course, we're still dealing with the tail end of the COVID period, which altered the markets quite a lot. So that's an issue as well. What do you think? What are your experiences? Those of you who sell or flip guitars, or maybe you buy and sell, get rid of the ones you don't want, that kind of thing. Are you noticing the same thing? It's interesting because, as I said, I've noticed a marked difference in supply. Stuff you used to be able to get a lot of is a lot harder to find. So you would think when something becomes available on the market, it would sell quicker because there are less options. For instance, if I want to buy something like this new, I would say 5 years ago, the availability and what people had in stock in local stores, what was being offered on the internet to be shipped, there were a lot more variations of any given thing, and you had more options. So it's interesting that there's a lesser supply, there's a lesser availability. However, there's also a slight increase in sluggishness in the market as well. Now, patience pays off. These sell. I'm not saying that I have stuff that doesn't sell. It all goes. I don't have anything that I put up for sale that never sells and I have to take it off sale. It just never happens. So yes, there will be a kid, there will be a family, there will be some back to school situation where this is perfect. And somebody will grab this and, this is a $160, $180 guitar that they'll get for, 2/3 of that or half that. So it will go. I'm just talking about the speed of the pacing of business these days. I'm noticing just a very slight sluggishness for stuff like this that would, people beat my door down to get something like this in the past. I've touched on a few things as to what I think is affecting that. But that's just, conjecture from my standpoint. You might have some theories on that. Depending on who you talk to, I hear loads of stuff. I hear the doomsayers saying we're heading for a worldwide recession. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. We're seeing oil prices rising lately because of conflicts around the world. We're seeing market correction in terms of things slowing down as a result of the pandemic period, but it's a residual slowdown. It's finally caught up with us, if you know what I mean. There are people saying that. There are people saying it's just a blip. There are people saying that the market's going to correct or pick back up. That these are just the ebbs and flows that we get all the time. and I'm open to all those suggestions. But yeah, just thought to do a video on it because it's unusual to have this on my rack for a week after posting it. These Spruce top $100 Dreadnought guitars with gig bag. This has got a lovely action, by the way. By the way, this was a guitar that I gave to my son-in-law, I think 2 years ago. And I recently gave him the Walden I showed you on here, which is a $400 guitar. So he asked me to sell this for him because he's now got the much nicer solid cedar top Walden guitar that I gave to him. When I got it back, I gave it to him new. When I got it back, the bridge was hanging off. You know, he was still trying to play it, and it was literally at an angle ready to pop off. And it's because where he lives, you know, he probably runs his heat in the winter and his air conditioning in the summer, and he had no hydration in his house. There's no humidification, so the house was very dry. And that's something that happens a lot on these cheaper guitars, particularly, is the glue joint under the bridge, when stuff dries out, gets really brittle and tends to fail. I've seen it a lot. In fact, he has a ukulele with exactly the same problem, with the bridge tilting up. So I've instructed him, he's not going to be in that location for very long, so it might not be an issue for too long, but I've instructed him to invest in a couple of those damp pits or sound hole humidifiers, so that the guitar stays humidified in the dry season or when you're running your air or heat, and you don't have issues like that. I had to peel this bridge off, level and sand because it didn't come off clean. And the bridge was slightly warped, so I had to flat sand it to make the bottom plane flat to be able to re-glue it. So it was a little bit of work getting it back together, but now you can't tell. It looks new. However, just bear that in mind, those of you who live in dry climates or those of you who live in air-conditioned houses. If you keep your guitar close to a heat vent or an air-conditioned vent, you might have these issues. So be sure to do some due diligence. What I do is I keep a nice big humidifier in the room, this room where I keep instruments. But if I didn't, I would invest in some of those sound hole damp pits or damp pits, you know, the tubes that you can put in there, just to keep particularly nicer, more expensive guitars humidified, so you don't have cracks, seams splitting, bridges pulling up, that kind of stuff. I just thought to throw that in there since it was an issue on this particular guitar. Anyway, JB player. What is this? It was part of a JB pack with bag, strap, tuner, all that kind of crap. So it was sold in a pack. And I think these are about $169, $179 new. I'm not seeing a whole lot of JB player instruments, so the production seems to have slowed down or is phasing out. But you still see them around, and they're pretty decent, particularly this model. It's got the correct woods. It's a pretty cheap, very glossy finish. It's not my favorite finish. In fact, I think the mahogany is better quality than the spruce on the top, which almost looks like whitewood because it's so heavily finished. It does have a rosewood board, and it does play pretty nicely with a good setup. So I think it's a good entry-level guitar. Anyway, if you need a guitar, bear in mind the $100 guitar with the spruce top, mahogany back and sides is going away. It's falling away. You're not going to be able to get it for too much longer. So bear that in mind as you look around and you see deals. What you're seeing now, you might not see in a year, 6 months. So spend accordingly. All right, folks. See you on the next one.